Ooh, okay, so there is a lot to talk about in the world of Football Manager at the moment. So it's pretty good that recently we started a series where we talk about things that are going on in the world of FM. So welcome back to FM Lately. Today we're going to start with the big one, the recent FM25 developmental blog that came out that has sent fans of Football Manager into a bit of a frenzy. So let's dive into it. Okay, so this is the blog post that we are talking about. It was released by Miles Jacobson, the lead director at Sports Interactive. He's the main man, the main boss at SI. He released this, or wrote this blog post on the 4th of September, a few days ago now. And in it, he's divulged some interesting information about the next game, FM25, which we already know, we've talked about in one of these videos previously, is going to be a big jump for FM. There's going to be a new engine, the Unity engine. So the game is being rebuilt from the ground upwards. With it, there's been a few problems, it seems. And we're going to answer the question, is FM25 going to be a disaster? Which is what some of the fan base seem to think is going to be the case, based on the things that have been included in this developmental update all about FM25. So he goes through, he talks about the FIFAe World Cup of Football Manager, which, by the way, I was there for the first couple of days. What an amazing event. We definitely need to talk about that maybe a little bit later in this video too. It was so cool to be there to see that taking place. And if you saw any of it online, what an amazing first glimpse into what FIFAe can do with Football Manager and what Football Manager could become as a potential esport, or at least in the world of esports anyway. The esports domain, as Miles has put it here. But that's not what has caught the eye of the fan base in this developmental blog. If we scroll down, this was the first thing. It talks about revising the timelines. Now, Football Manager has always been released at the end of October, and then with the beta, or the early access as it was called last year, and then at the start of November the game released fully. It's usually around my birthday, which is on the 6th of November, and it's usually, I think it came out on the 6th of November last year on the exact date, or maybe it was the day before. Either way, it's usually the start of November, their usual early November slot. However, this year their new target launch date has been moved back to the late November rather than early November. This, rather than it just being slightly adjusting the timelines, as SI were maybe trying to put it in this blog post, has sent fans into a meltdown going, oh my word, it's not ready, it's going to be a disaster, what's happening, the game's going to be a complete rubbish. I think hold on to that, because I'm not quite sure that is the case. But we're going to discuss the fallout from this blog post, because it's not just the later date and the fact that there's been a delay based on all of the changes that need to be made. Does this show that actually it's a bigger job than they were originally anticipating? Does this show issues with the game that we're going to be served up? Lots of people are saying it's going to be a disaster, I'm not going to buy it, I'm going to stick with FM24 and be ready when the game's ready for FM26. We'll talk about that later. This one though, this part here is why people have been thrown into meltdown, and there has been meltdown mainly on x.com, Twitter, because that's where people love to get the most angry, it seems. And maybe you guys watching on YouTube, maybe you hold this opinion, or maybe you're a little bit more rational, maybe you're just kind of a little bit more calm about things. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm going to talk to you about how I feel about this. But Football Manager, Sports Interactive released the news that international management will not be a playable mode in FM25. It will still be in FM mobile, but it will not be available to become an international manager in next year's game. That is a blow. And my personal opinion on this is that this is disappointing. This is a worry. This is something that you can be a bit like, oh, that's a bit rubbish. I'm not going to be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not going to be saying FM25 is a complete disaster. But I am disappointed about this, because if you're going to become a football manager in the game of Football Manager, you want to have all of the avenues that are available to a real football manager be opened up to you in your fictional world. Where you're setting the narrative with, when you're talking about, I'm going to go and become the Hereford manager, and then later become the Liverpool manager, and then maybe one day be the England manager. That not being possible is disappointing. It does not for me, and they give their reasons for that. They talk about the fact that not many people actually play it, and that what they've tried to do with it hasn't been possible in this game cycle. So that rather than putting out a substandard international manager mode, they're deciding to hold it back and then bring it back in FM26 when it's really, really good. I can sort of understand the reasoning behind that. And if that is the case, I sort of get it. They talked about it not meeting their standards that they wanted it to release ready for this cycle. I sort of get it. I'm a little bit put off by the fact that they're bringing up the small player percentages that play international modes. And maybe you're watching this thinking, I've never been an international manager, I don't really care. I very rarely do it, but I very rarely do it because it wasn't very good. And what I'd much rather it be was to be really good. We did a video where we talked about how we would fix Football Manager. I got your opinions on social media. One of the biggest bits of feedback was that people would fix Football Manager by making international management really, really good. The fact that they've maybe tried to do that and failed and then taken it out completely feels like a big backward step, and that is disappointing. I won't sugarcoat that, and I'm not one of those people who go, barely anyone plays it, stop being angry for the sake of being angry. I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. Is that worse? It might be. I feel like a parent with that. However, I'm going to clarify that once again by saying it isn't the end of the world, and when you look at the reasoning, you can sort of understand if you read it in full, but it is a little bit potentially worrying. So if you are feeling worried, I think I agree with you. By the way, I want to know your thoughts about this in the comment section below. Remember, when reading the other comments too, often the people who are leaving comments are the most tribal, the loudest, the ones who have the most extreme views on these things. There may be a lot of people who are feeling completely dismayed by all of this, and fair enough, that's your opinion. But also remember that just because that's your feelings doesn't mean that it's everybody else's feelings too. There will be people who will still play the game and love it. I will still play the game, and I'm sure I will still love it. We've had a little bit more of a window as creators into what FM25 could be by talking to people who are making the game, and the way that they talk about the game, they're really excited. So I may be more hopeful than some people, and the reason that we're all here talking about it is because we love Football Manager. They're going to create a game that we're all going to really enjoy. I'm certain of that, but still, these are a little bit disappointing things. The one area where the backlash has been almost laughable, in my opinion, is the fact that they've talked about in this update removing a player's weight from a player profile screen. They talk about the reasons for that in that they're introducing women's football. This is a good thing, by the way. And actually, this is one place where if you think bringing women's football into Football Manager is a woke thing to do and it's a negative, then I'm sorry, I just can't get on board with your opinion. I just don't agree. And that's okay. I think you're wrong, but then again, we live in a world where we all have very different opinions. But for me, that is only a good thing, and I just think of all the positives that can come from it. I think of the way that FC24 this year had women's footballers in there. I didn't know many women's footballers. I knew the big names. I know loads now because I brought them into my ultimate team, and that was only a positive. So that when I see them in playing, I watched some of the Olympics women's games, and I saw Salma Basha playing for France. I was like, I love Salma Basha. She's an amazing left back in my ultimate team. I think that's only a good thing. Anyway, we are definitely digressing here. The news came through in this blog here that they would not be showing a player's weight in FM25 because they talked about in the women's game, the fluctuation of weights is so much more. It just wasn't going to be accurate, and they're just deciding that it's women's body types are very different, and they're not going to include weight on a player profile screen. I'm not sure that this was a big deal anyway, and there was some really good posts that I saw on the internet that talked about how even the men's weights were completely inaccurate, and people talking about the immersion being ruined. When was the last time you really looked at a player's weight on the screen and cared about it? I think I actually look more than most people would, because I always look for the big, beefy, strong players, but I'm looking for strong players, not necessarily heavy players. So you can look at something else for that, and that's the strength attribute. So I don't think we would have noticed this. Maybe a couple of people would if it wasn't even told to us. So I sort of don't care about this. This is not as big a deal as the international management for me, and not as worrying as the fact that they've already had to push back the release date. Those things, I think there are areas of concern, but minor concerns that let's just sort of see what they deliver in terms of a new game on a new engine. If those are still big, huge leaps forward, I think we can get behind the fact that international management's not going to be there. If the game doesn't work and they don't have international management, then we can panic. But we just don't know yet, do we? They do talk about having these testing events coming up towards I think it's into October, but they're going to be inviting people to the office to come and play FM25. So maybe then I'm hoping I can get the chance to sign up for this and be part of this. Hopefully then we can see actually what does FM25 look like. Either way, there's been a huge backlash to this. We had to talk about it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below, and let's have a healthy debate and be nice to each other. And remember, we might not agree, but that's okay sometimes. All right, let's move on to something a little bit more lighthearted. So as light relief, I've decided to rank my top 5 FN-style transfers that occurred IRL this summer, because every time anything happens in the real world of football and it just resembles Football Manager, I always think, that's very Football Manager, that. And for example, the first one, in at number 5, I'm going to go for Samu Omorodion's move from Atletico to FC Porto. He was linked so heavily with Chelsea, wasn't he? That fell apart. And then he's ended up going to Porto for 15 million euros to purchase, I think it's a percentage of his sportsman rights, etc. So they don't fully own him, but they're also included a 50% sell-on fee and a £100 million release clause to him. These are all of the tricks of the trade that you do when you're trying to sign a player. Say you were the Porto manager and you wanted to get Omorodyon. You do all these things, you know, put all the installments in. It just feels all very Football Manager. And I've picked out 4 other transfers that happened this summer that I just think they're just all very FM. Next up, in at number 4, I want to talk about Charlie Austin's move and his decision to move to AFC Tottenham, which, I mean, they're in the 7th tier, and he's decided to move there after leaving Swindon Town. This feels like, in Football Manager, if you're doing like a lower league save and you just search for players based on reputation and you just say, oh, look, it's Charlie Austin. He's interested, and you sign him on a free. It just feels very, very FM. Good luck to him. I like it when a player just decides to keep on playing but drop down the levels to play for and end up playing at random places like AFC Tottenham. I mean, what does he say? What is his reasoning for moving here? I think I just wanted to spend more time with family. I do football with my son, training midweek, and something I didn't want to miss out on. It's just lovely. He seems like a lovely man, does Chaz Austin. I don't know why I've called him that. Charlie Austin. Next up, what's in at number 3? In at number 3 is the bizarre moves that Napoli have made in this window. Signing 2 decent players, actually. But you cannot convince me that Napoli is not some Scottish man playing a Football Manager save, because they have signed Billy Gilmore and Scott McTominay this summer to reinvent their midfield into a all-Scottish affair. And again, you just can't convince me that that's not just some Scottish bloke just playing Football Manager, right? I mean, maybe it's him and his mate playing, because in at number 2 is the move that Las Palmas have made this summer, signing Ollie McBurney and Scott McKenna. So this is 2 Scottish lads in a network game. Las Palmas and Napoli. It has to be that. We're in an alternative universe here. This is what's happening. You won't convince me otherwise. But still these weird FM-like moves still don't make number 1 of my list. And that's because in at number 1 is the fact that Jamal Lewis has moved to Sao Paulo in Brazil on loan. That only happens in Football Manager. It shouldn't be happening in real life. It's a Football Manager move. And those are my top 5 weird FM-like transfers. But then recently, the other day, this news came through that Real Madrid were about to sign a new coach. And that was Stockport's assistant coach, Andy Mangan, who apparently worked with Carlo Ancelotti back at Everton. And now he's been recruited by him to go to Real Madrid. A Stockport coach is going to go and sign for Real Madrid. This is just what happens in your Football Manager save when you get to like 2041. This Football Manager's coming true. It's happening in the real world. It's happening. And I wanted to finish up. I said that I'd talk about this in today's video, today's episode of FM Lately. I was lucky enough to go and attend the FIFAe World Cup featuring Football Manager, and eventually Indonesia were crowned our champions. It was an unbelievable event. It was so cool to see Football Manager on that stage, in that realm. There was like, I went backstage and looked at all of the production team, and it was like a spaceship with all of the screens in there to produce this product. And I got to stream from there, and I even got to try my hand at a little bit of presenting as well, which was so much fun. It was really cool just to be involved. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there the whole time. I wish I could have been. But seeing the lads in there, you had Tom and Jack in the one team, you had RDF and SYC in the other team. They did great. These Indonesian lads were so nice when you met them. All of the teams were great. It was just an amazing event to be part of. I think I mentioned it earlier, but it really does open the door to what Football Manager could become. I really hope that FIFA FIFAe as an organisation saw it as a success. I really hope that Football Manager Sports Interactive see it as an opportunity and something that happens again next year, where we can tweak the way that it works a little bit, and hopefully the format can change. Some little improvements can be made. But what a time! And if you didn't get to catch it, it was really cool. We had a group stage where, I mean, it was so professional. They had the first day where it was just photos being taken and stuff for socials and interviews and all going on, and they had to pre-season. Then in the first proper day, the group stage started. They were drawn into 4 different groups. They had Marinos, Brighton, Sporting, or Dinamo. So completely different context to play Football Manager in. And they all had to, over the next 3 days, play a season a day, really quickly getting through things. And you got points based on how well you did. If you won the league, you got points. If you went through in the cups, you got points. If you won trophies, you got points. If you got good board ratings, and if you completed certain challenges, you got management points. And then the top team from each group, the 4 groups from the 4 different teams, went into the knockout semi-finals, where they did a draft and then played each other until eventually we had the Indonesian team playing the German team, who had been sensational throughout, and it was the Indonesian team that eventually won at the end. And these were the managers throughout. And if you look at the professional photos, it was just so cool to see Football Manager on the stage, and it created an amazing event. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it if you did watch it, and I just felt really lucky to be part of it. I loved it, and I felt like I had to mention it in today's episode of FM Lately. It's been a bit of a weird one. We've had some light relief, we've had some really cool things going on with FM, and we've had some worrying things. Overall though, I don't think FM25 is going to be a disaster. I think we're still going to have a really cool game, but I just hope they can pull off what I know they're trying to pull off for next year's game. Let me know what you think of everything in the comments down below. And as always, if you spot something that you think should be in an FM Lately video, tag me in it on social media. My Twitter links and all of my other links, the Discord and everything, all of those links are in the description of today's video. Thank you very much for watching. And if you made it to the end, you can leave me a comment that says up the wife, because I did get married this month. So cheers for that. Yeah, I'll know that you've watched to the very end. Subscribe to the channel. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Catch you very soon. Bye-bye.